Washington was and still is a city of whispers and hidden corridors where power moved like a ghost. But that day, it was shaken, not by a tremor, but by a roar. A federal judge dared to order the arrest of Karoline Leavitt, a name now etched into the very foundation of American courage. She was just 27, brimming with the raw, undeniable spirit of Gen Z, and she'd done what so many only dreamed of. She challenged the system, not with polite debate, but with sharp, unvarnished truth. From the gilded cage of the White House briefing room, she didn't just speak. She ignited a fire of justice that would soon turn a hallowed courtroom into a battleground for an entire nation. This isn't just a story. It's a living testament to what happens when one voice, fearless and true, dares to shatter the silence. Before we dive headfirst into this incredible journey, pause for a moment. You're witnessing history unfold, and you don't want to miss a single beat. Comment where you're watching from. Let your voice join the chorus that swept across America. And while you're here, make sure to subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, and ring the notification bell so you won't miss the latest stories of ordinary people becoming extraordinary heroes. Because this is just the beginning. Weeks ago, the air in the White House briefing room crackled with an energy Washington hadn't felt in years. At the podium, Leavitt's voice, sharp, confident, brimming with Gen Z spirit, didn't just speak. It rang out like an alarm bell. Any federal judge who dares to block policies protecting American workers, she declared, each word clear as a blade, is standing with privilege, not justice. That wasn't just a statement. It was an arrow aimed straight at Judge Malcolm Greer. Just moments earlier, his pen had scrawled a signature that extinguished hope for millions. He had signed an order blocking the Trump administration's tariff policy, a policy that was more than just a trade counterpunch to China and Canada. It was the last armor for millions of American workers, for rusted-out towns, for borderland. Farmers, it was the one thing still holding them upright. Greer had snuffed it out like one might a match. But Leavitt, with a fierce loyalty to President Trump, and more importantly, to the working class whose lives hung in the balance, didn't hesitate. She struck back. Now she was no longer at the podium, surrounded by the comforting whir of cameras and the familiar glow of teleprompters. Instead, she stood before the bar. There was no microphone, no prepared speech, only heavy silence and the piercing gaze of a powerful judge waiting to drop the gavel. Judge Greer adjusted his glasses, his stare cold as a scalpel, and spoke. "Low, hard, cold as marble," he began. "Miss Leavitt, you've been summoned to answer for conduct undermining this court's authority through public statements." Each word landed on the wooden floor with the echo of a verdict. But Leavitt didn't flinch. She didn't dodge. She refused counsel, a decision that left even the White House stunned. "If I'm here for what I said," she told her team, gripping her husband Nicholas Riccio's hand, her quiet pillar of strength, "then I'll say it myself, no one else." The courtroom was a pressure cooker, ready to burst. Not a single seat left. Reporters crammed in, breathless, cameras whirring, lenses capturing every expression, especially Karoline Leavitt's eyes, calm, resolute, as if the packed room didn't exist. Behind her, there was no crowd of voters or PR team. Instead, there was a vivid portrait of forgotten America, a steel worker from Kentucky, shoulders draped in a worn Union jacket like battle armor. A single mother from Ohio, clutching a framed photo of her son, who once dreamed of engineering but now delivered packages full-time. A veteran, legs no longer whole, eyes cold as steel, still on a battlefield, now pinning his faith on Leavitt. They weren't invited. No press release summoned them. No one led them here. They came for a promise spoken not from a podium, but from the heart. "If I fail," Leavitt once said, "I'll carry your stories with me to the end." And they believed. They piled into creaky buses, stuffed into old pickups, driving through cold nights and early rain, not to shout, not to wave signs. They came to stand beside the one woman who dared turn their pain into a proclamation. What do you think of Karoline Leavitt's bold decision to face the judge alone? Judge Greer leaned forward, his gaze cold as steel, his voice steady, carrying the weight of a system unaccustomed to challenge. "Miss Leavitt," he began, each syllable delivered with the precision of a federal judge, "your statements have been deemed incitement against judicial authority. Do you have anything to say?" The room held its breath. The air thickened, suffocating. Karoline Leavitt lifted her head. No evasion, not a crease on her brow. Her voice rang out, calm, sharp as a blade. "I speak for those you never see, Your Honor." A moment exploded in silence, a gasp from the back. A reporter froze, hand hovering over the keyboard. A camera panned slightly, zooming in on Leavitt's unblinking eyes. She stood before the bench, her heels clicking lightly on the wooden floor. As she stepped forward, her piercing gaze sweeping over Judge Malcolm Greer, the judge in a stern black suit sat high in his chair, hands on the desk, his deep voice carrying the authority of one accustomed to commanding a courtroom. "Leavitt," he began again, each syllable delivered with the precision of a federal judge, "your statements at the press briefing have been deemed a direct challenge to judicial authority. Do you intend to retract them?" The question hung sharp as a blade, but Leavitt only offered a faint smile, not arrogance, but the confidence of someone who knew what they were fighting for. "Miss Leavitt, did you hear my question?" Greer asked again, his tone icy yet dignified. Leavitt raised her head higher, her voice clear, not loud but precise to every syllable. "Your Honor, I retract nothing. Your ruling stripped hope from American workers, the ones this administration is protecting." Murmurs rippled through the room. A reporter in the corner typed frantically on a laptop. A camera shifted to capture Leavitt in a close-up. The crowd behind her, workers, mothers, veterans, sat taller, as if her words were a flame warming them. Greer struck his gavel, the sound silencing the room. "You are overstepping, Miss Leavitt," he said, his voice calm but laced with warning. "This court is not a stage for your political speeches." Leavitt tilted her head, her eyes glinting with defiance. "I'm not giving a speech, Your Honor. I'm speaking for those out there, the ones without microphones, without press rooms, who deserve to be heard." She turned slightly, her gaze sweeping the crowd, a man with calloused hands, a woman clutching a worn purse. "They're here, and I speak for them." The courtroom erupted in silence. No one spoke, but the power of the moment rippled outward. At the White House, her team watched on screens, an aide whispering, "She's not just a press secretary, she's a warrior." In New Hampshire, her mother sat before the TV, hands clasped, proud yet anxious. Greer remained unmoved, but his hands tightened. On the desk, "You are treading on contempt of court," he warned, his voice professional, but his eyes betraying a hint of tension. "Do you understand the consequences?" Leavitt responded, her voice softer but brimming with strength. "Consequences. I understand. But if speaking the truth is a crime, I'm ready to pay the price, and I'm not standing here alone." She gestured to the crowd, and in response a man stood, a steelworker, cap backward, eyes resolute. Then another, a mother with disheveled hair, rose. Then a veteran, leaning on a cane, raised his head high. They said nothing, but their actions echoed louder than any speech. Cameras captured it all. A short clip from the trial went viral with millions of views captioned, "Karoline Leavitt is fearless." Trump, from the White House, posted, "Karoline is the voice of the people. This court should be ashamed." The post garnered thousands of shares and comments within moments. Leavitt, standing in the courtroom, felt the weight of this moment. She wasn't just a 27-year-old from New Hampshire. She was a flag bearer for those never invited into rooms of power like this. Greer struck his gavel again, the sound sharp and cold. "Miss Leavitt, this is my final warning," he said, his voice steady, professional to the last detail. "This court does not tolerate defiance." Leavitt smiled faintly, not to provoke, but to affirm. "I'm not defying your honor. I'm just doing my job, speaking the truth America needs to hear." Murmurs rose again, but this time they didn't stop. The crowd began to clap slowly, then stronger, like the beat of a war drum. The courtroom sank into a stifling silence, as if the entire space held its breath before a spark ignited. Karoline Leavitt stood firm before the bench, her eyes locked on Judge Malcolm Greer, who gripped his gavel tightly, his face tense, but maintaining the dignity of a federal judge. The crowd behind Leavitt, workers, mothers, veterans, sat motionless, but their eyes burned like torches, ablaze with faith in the woman facing down the system. Media cameras stirred, lenses trained on Leavitt, ready to capture a historic moment. Greer struck his gavel, the sharp sound cutting through the air. "Enough!" he declared, his voice maintaining its formality but betraying its firmness. "Leavitt, I order your immediate arrest for contempt of court." The courtroom froze. A bailiff stepped forward, handcuffs glinting under the lights. Leavitt took a deep breath, her eyes sweeping the crowd, the faces of the Americans she promised to represent. She removed the slim watch from her wrist, placed it on the bench, then slipped. Her purse off her shoulder, her movements slow, almost ceremonial. "If this is the price for speaking the truth," she said, her voice ringing through the room, "I accept it, but I want all of America to know I'm not standing alone." The crowd erupted. A veteran stood abruptly, old army cap in hand, followed by a mother, then a steelworker. They didn't chant, didn't shout. Their unity resounded louder than any noise. The officer approached, cuffing Leavitt. The metal clinked lightly, but she didn't bow her head. Cameras captured every second, her gleaming blonde hair, the striking red dress, and her resolute eyes. The image spread instantly. On social media, a short courtroom video exploded with millions of views, captioned, "Karoline Leavitt, handcuffed for speaking the truth." Outside the courthouse, a crowd gathered holding handmade signs. "Karoline is our voice." A worker from Ohio, standing under harsh sunlight, told a reporter, "She says what we can't." A single mother from Kentucky, clutching her child, added, "She's standing up for my kid, for his future." Peaceful protests spread, not partisan, but a unity of those who felt forgotten by the system. In a temporary holding cell, Leavitt sat on a cold metal bench, but refused bail. "I'm not leaving until the truth is heard," she told the officer, her voice calm, quintessentially Gen Z, direct, unyielding. She asked for a phone, and though denied, a guard secretly recorded her through a surveillance camera. In the video, Leavitt looked straight at the lens. "I'm here for those without a voice. Workers, mothers, veterans, they deserve to be heard." The brief clip, just seconds long, spread like wildfire, racking up millions of views in hours. A user wrote, "She's in jail, but her spirit is free." The courtroom door closed, but the echo of Karoline Leavitt's handcuffing reverberated through. The federal courthouse in Washington. Outside, sunlight bathed the stone-paved streets where hundreds had gathered, hands raised with hastily written signs. Karoline is the people's voice. Their chants were not loud, but the resolve in their eyes, workers, farmers, women, veterans, was a silent symphony radiating unstoppable strength. Meanwhile, on social media, Leavitt's image, with her blonde hair and unyielding gaze, became a flame burning through geographic boundaries. In the cell, Leavitt sat on the steel bench. No phone, no team, only a piece of paper and a pen, she begged. "From a guard," she wrote quickly, each line a call to action. "Don't stay silent, tell your story." Somehow the message got out. A guard secretly snapped a photo of the paper, posting it online with the caption, from Karoline in jail. The posts spread like wind, sparking a wave of shared personal stories. A worker from Pennsylvania wrote, "I lost my job to imports. Karoline gets it." A woman from Mississippi added, "I'm raising 3 kids alone. She gives me hope." These stories, brief but raw, transformed Leavitt from press secretary into a symbol of truth. Outside the courthouse, the crowd grew. A group of Ohio workers carried a large banner painted in red. "We stand with Karoline." A veteran in a worn army jacket stood amid the crowd, telling a CNN reporter, "I fought for this country, but I never felt heard until Karoline spoke up." A Fox News reporter, a few feet away, captured a young mother holding a photo of her son, saying, "She was handcuffed for my son's future." The protests weren't partisan, but a bond among those exhausted by Washington's empty promises. The pressure began to weigh on Malcolm Greer. In his office, he watched the news, the TV screen showing the crowd outside the courthouse. An aide stepped in, voice low, "Your Honor, the press is questioning the impartiality of your ruling." Greer, with the calm of a seasoned judge, replied, "The court is not swayed by crowds." In the holding cell, Leavitt received a clandestine message from a guard. "The whole country is behind you." She smiled, not out of triumph, but knowing those she represented were speaking out. Another secretly recorded video captured her in the cell, telling the guard, "Tell everyone I'm okay and keep sharing their stories." The low-quality video spread fiercely, garnering millions of shares. A user wrote, "She's in jail, but her spirit is free." Protests spread beyond Washington. In Pittsburgh, steelworkers gathered outside a factory holding signs, "Karoline is us." In Boise, farmers held a peaceful rally, singing the national anthem under a gray sky. In Cleveland, mothers and high school students stood in the rain, holding candles, praying for Leavitt. These moments, captured on phones, flooded social media, creating a rare tapestry of unity. An MSNBC reporter remarked, "Karoline Leavitt has turned a trial into a people's movement." Pressure on Greer mounted. The press dug into his ruling, questioning his motives. An online article read, "Is Greer siding with workers or the elite?" On social media, a user posted a photo of Greer leaving the courthouse, captioned, "This judge thinks he can silence Karoline. He's wrong." Greer, though outwardly calm, felt the heat. An aide reported, "Your Honor, Congress is discussing a judicial inquiry." Greer didn't respond, but his hand tightened around a pen, a sign of unease. In the dimly lit office, the computer screen's glow illuminated Judge Malcolm Greer's tense face. A new email landed in his inbox titled simply, "The truth about your ruling." Attached were leaked documents, secret exchanges between Greer and a group of activists opposing Trump's tariff policy. The email's words cut like knives. "We must stop this policy at all costs." Sent by a disgruntled court employee to a freelance journalist, the document spread rapidly, shaking the wall of authority Greer built around himself. Outside, the Sacre de Weir Karoline movement kept growing. From small Montana towns to Miami's bustling streets, people gathered not to shout, but to demand transparency. The spark had truly become a wildfire. The morning sun streamed through the high windows of the Washington Federal Courthouse, but in Judge Malcolm Greer's office, the air felt heavy as darkness. Before him lay a single sheet of paper, an order to drop the contempt of court charge against Karoline Leavitt. Pressure from the public, from Congress, and those damning leaked emails had finally cornered him. With a trembling hand, Greer signed his name, then penned a brief letter of resignation. "I stepped down to preserve the honor of the judicial system," he wrote, but the nation knew the pristine image he tried to uphold was shattered. He had lost. The prison gate swung open, and Karoline Leavitt stepped out, not as a prisoner, but as a living symbol. The crowd outside, thousands strong from across America, stood in silence, their eyes gleaming. No cheers, no waving flags, only deep, profound respect. Leavitt, in a simple blouse, her blonde hair tied high, paused on the steps. She looked at the crowd, workers with worn boots, women with weary smiles, veterans with resolute eyes, and spoke, her voice clear. "Every one of you stood in that cell with me." Her words, like a breeze, touched every heart. Greer, in his final hours in his office, avoided the public. His resignation letter, read on television, carried a formal tone, but couldn't hide his defeat. "I step down for the good of the judicial system," he declared, but the press showed no mercy. An online article titled, "Judge Greer from Power to Humiliation," went viral. On social media, a user posted, "Greer thought he could jail Karoline. He didn't expect a nation behind her." Greer's downfall wasn't just personal, it was a sign of a system finally forced toward transparency. At the White House, Leavitt's team erupted in joy. A young aide, hugging a colleague, whispered, "She did what no one dared dream." Nicholas Riccio, Leavitt's husband, faced the press, his voice choked with emotion. "Karoline fought for those who have no one. She's my light." President Trump, in a brief speech, praised Karoline Leavitt as a symbol of patriotism. "She's made America proud." His words, broadcast live, affirmed that this victory belonged to a nation. The crowd outside the prison didn't disperse. A weathered Pittsburgh worker stepped forward, handing Leavitt a union pin. "You gave us hope," he said. A Boise mother gave her a handwritten letter from her daughter. "Miss Karoline, I want to grow up strong like you." Leavitt accepted, her eyes shining with emotion, but she held back tears. "This isn't my victory," she said, voice steady. "This is your victory." In the days that followed, Leavitt didn't chase the spotlight. She returned to her office, sat among stacks of papers, and read letters from the public. One from a veteran read, "You gave me a reason to believe in America." Leavitt set the letter down, gazing out the window where sunlight streamed through. She knew this victory wasn't an end, but the start of a greater journey. Greer, now a shadow of himself, left Washington in silence. His name became a symbol of abuse of power, a warning to those who think they can stifle the truth. Karoline Leavitt, with her courage and resolve, had turned a trial into a triumph for justice. She stood there among the crowd, not as a hero, but as someone who carried a nation with her. The vast blue sky stretched over Nebraska's wheat fields, where Karoline Leavitt stood among farmers, listening to their stories of failed harvests and mounting debts. No microphone, no cameras, just a small notebook in hand. She jotted notes, nodded, and promised, "I'll carry your stories further." From Texas border towns to flood-ravaged Louisiana, Leavitt traveled across America, not seeking fame, but to connect the pieces of a country yearning to be heard. She, a 27-year-old once handcuffed, was now a torch illuminating forgotten corners. Congress, feeling the undeniable pressure of the Karoline movement, passed the Judicial Transparency Act, requiring judges to disclose communications to prevent abuse of power. A senator at the bill's signing ceremony declared, "Karoline Leavitt forced us to look in the mirror." The law, bearing her mark, became a legal legacy, ensuring justice isn't distorted by politics. Leavitt rejected the hero label. At a youth forum in Ohio, she stood on stage, eyes bright but voice steady. "Patriotism isn't a medal, it's a responsibility." She spoke of her days in jail, not to boast, but to remind that every American has the power to change. Students rose to applaud, not for her fame, but because she instilled belief in themselves. In small communities, children drew pictures of Leavitt, calling her the truth teller. A Montana drawing of her with a notebook, shared on TikTok, carried the caption, "She teaches us to speak up." Leavitt, though busy, always answered public letters, each word a tireless commitment. Her legacy wasn't in the spotlight, but in the people she inspired, from farmers to students, to believe their voices matter. In her final speech at a community conference, Leavitt looked at the crowd and said, "We don't just live in this country, we shape it." Her words, simple yet powerful, echoed across America. Karoline Leavitt wasn't just a symbol of justice. She was a reminder that one person with courage can awaken a nation. The story of Karoline Leavitt offers a profound lesson about the power of an individual voice in driving change. In modern America, where political polarization and inequality still challenge society, Leavitt, a young press secretary, turned a trial into the We're Karoline movement by daring to speak the truth about a policy affecting American workers. Her actions remind us that in a free country, every individual has the right to speak out against injustice, whether through a single social media post or by confronting a judge. When she stood in court, calling on the public to join her, she sparked unity among workers, women, and veterans, those often overlooked. This teaches us that in modern life, social media can be a powerful tool to connect and amplify a collective voice. Moreover, Leavitt's rejection of the hero title and her visits to communities like Nebraska and Louisiana show the value of humility and listening. Americans today can learn from her. Instead of seeking fame, focus on supporting those around you, like farmers or jobless workers. The Judicial Transparency Act, a direct result of her movement, underscores that systemic change requires persistence and unity, not just fleeting protests. The lesson is clear. Dare to stand up, use your voice on available platforms, but always connect with real communities for lasting impact. Every small step, like Leavitt's notebook in a forgotten wheat field, can change America. Don't let these stories fade into the background. If Karoline Leavitt's journey resonated with you, give this video a like, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and comment your thoughts below. And of course, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to explore more stories of people who changed America with courage.